All right. Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on the 2021 Cybersecurity Budget Must-Haves for every small and medium-sized business. My name is Alex Nette, and for today's purposes, along with every other day, I am the cyber guy. I'll be talking about all of this from a cybersecurity perspective, including best practices and leveraging my previous experience in the industry to help you outline and set your cybersecurity budget for next year.
Hello and welcome again. I'm Michael Cardman. I am the money guy for today's purposes, and I'll help try and tie those cybersecurity priorities into how that aligns with your budget for the company in 2021.
So what are you walking away with today? Ultimately, you want to provide an understanding of the external forces that are going to impact your decisions. That will help you outline and create objectives and motivations for the different business groups who are going to take part in your budgetary planning. We'll talk about that shortly. And ultimately take all of that and put it together into an actionable plan. So looking back on 2020, what were the forces that changed what we did over the past year? Well, the first was COVID-19 and understanding how it was going to impact us and ultimately change the way that we work.
The second was the economic downturn that came from that happened in March and April of this year.
Finally, we looked at moving and working remote. So as we left our offices and started to work from our homes and other alternate locations, what did that mean for the way that we did business and the way that we handled IT? Looking ahead to 2021, though, COVID-19 has become living with COVID-19. And how does that fundamentally change the way that we work and interact with the world every day?
The economic downturn has come into an economic uncertainty as we try to forecast what 2021 looks like, not only for our business, but our investments in our business.
And finally, looking at remote work into new ways to work. Many companies have moved to full-time remote work and have said that they may be abandoning their in-office facilities altogether. All of these are going to be fundamental changes that factor into your 2021 cybersecurity budget. So who should help plan for that budget? Well, generally, we look to three main groups. The first is business leaders, those who lead your organization and help set the goals and the path for the company. The second is your IT team, looking at what technologies are going to empower those same business processes that are set by the business leaders. And the third, if you have it, is your cybersecurity team, making sure that those same processes work securely. The only problem with this is traditionally they operate as silos or castles and stand alone on themselves. Even worse, oftentimes each of these groups fight over the discrete line items that exist within the budget, and they build walls and barriers between each other. This does not lead to a better cybersecurity practice and posture for your company. Instead, looking ahead, it's about working together and combining those resources and working hand in hand. But even more importantly, between these three groups, it's about partnering together and ultimately helping leverage the shared success for each and every department across your organization.
From a financial perspective, that coming together and leveraging the team effort really has a hidden advantage that you need to take advantage, and that's combining budgets across divisions or company so that you can do a holistic planning as one cybersecurity profile and not those individual castles or silos. So as we look to 2021, Alex and I have developed three buckets where we think you should assess and plan. The first is to overcome technical debt, and we'll discuss what that means in a few slides. The second is to make sure you're choosing the right SaaS solution. And remember, SaaS is software as a service. The third and final, and near and dear to my heart, is making sure that your investment in the company and the resources is a secure return on investment. And again, we'll get into what that is in just a few slides.
So let's take a look at this first must-have, overcoming technical debt. Well, what does that mean? Using an old analogy here, your organization is the hare and your competitors are the tortoise, and you're a little bit behind. So you have a theory that you're going to leverage some new technologies to rocket ahead in the future and ahead of your competition. The problem is that you have a number of legacy IT items that are holding back your company. Old servers and switches and operating systems and applications that are on premise and not elsewhere. And so as a result, your attempts to move forward in the future are hamstrung by the same things that burden you behind. Even worse, though, your competition has leveraged the cloud and is rocketing ahead into the future.
So as we look at overcoming that technical debt, and we're going to tie it back to who should be at the planning table. And across all of these slides, we have our business leaders our IT team, and our cyber team. And we're going to try and outline the objectives, the overlaps, and the combination and synergy between them. From a business leader and IT team objective, it's really assessing and understanding what that technical debt is. You can't get rid of it until you know what you have. So you have to look at your legacy IT and see what the switching costs are, see when its end of life use is, and how long and what solution is providing for you. Now, there's a lot of bad that's come from COVID, but one small good thing is that it's acted as a catalyst to force businesses to really assess where they stand from an IT technical debt standpoint.
On the cybersecurity side, ultimately, one of the big things as we overcome technical debt is the need to increase our cybersecurity posture and ultimately reduce that risk. One thing that you may have heard is that local IT is more secure than the cloud. But IT that's located at your company, whether in a data center that you manage or in your office, does not always equal it being more secure. And the cloud is not inherently insecure either. The biggest takeaway, though, from the cyber team objectives here is that ultimately modern IT allows modern cybersecurity protection options. Oftentimes, cybersecurity is developed for the latest and greatest, and some of those technologies don't work with older legacy IT systems or can't be as efficient or effective. So what does that look like for your budget items? Well, the first is setting aside resources, and again, that's either going to be money or time or people, to make sure that you document your critical business information and identify those associated IT assets, so the actual technologies that power it. This list is really going to help you understand where your risk is and how you can plan for moving to the SaaS solutions that we're going to talk about shortly. Also, as you do this, you want to make sure that you identify your IT ecosystem and think about the broader IT ecosystem. So that includes third-party technologies that you leverage or third parties that you've contracted with who manage and own your data. Where that information is stored and processed is also an important consideration because it's not just about where it sits, but where it moves through as well. Finally, this information can be ingested as part of a threat model, and ultimately that's going to help you design and choose secure solutions in the future.
Moving into our second area, is identifying and choosing the right SaaS solution to support you and your company. Historically, there's been a bit of a balancing act between the IT team trying to provide a solution to support business leaders, and then the IT team trying to figure out if they can do it securely. And that doesn't really work. You have this problem that just because it works, it might not work securely. We suggest, however, the reality is that you rise and fall together. So this goes back to our who should be at the planning table. Everyone in one basket together, you can lift off for success. So in choosing the right SaaS solution, going back to our business leaders and IT team objectives, it's not only identifying the solution, but understanding the operational benefits of how your now remote workforce is working. What solutions are going to help support that? What's going to enhance that? And what could ultimately hamper it by trying to pigeonhole a specific service? There's also this subscription value proposition. In today's IT world, you no longer buy your Windows CD and throw it in and have a certain number of licenses to install. You can scale the subscription with the growth and contraction of a business. You also have a reduced focus on maintenance because you are offloading it to the SaaS provider. And finally, you can reduce the digital footprint that you have as a company, which ultimately reduces your bottom line expense for software.
On the cybersecurity side, one of the big objectives here is going to be focusing and factoring in cybersecurity resilience into those choices. So as you're looking at some of those SaaS solutions and ultimately selecting one, security needs to be a part of that and evaluated as part of it. The way that we're going to do this is using a framework, and we'll talk about this in just a few minutes. The other thing you want to do is understand the cybersecurity responsibilities. It should be outlined whether it's you or your SaaS provider that ultimately has to take care of some of these cybersecurity issues and methodologies that are located under this framework that we'll talk about. One of the big goals, though, is ultimately reducing your digital footprint helps reduce risk. And so where you have opportunities to consolidate different IT technologies into one SaaS solution, you can reduce your overhead expenses, reduce redundancies between people and departments and money spend, but ultimately reduce that footprint reduces your risk for your organization. So what do those budget items look like? Well, the first is really going to be around building and maintaining effective cybersecurity controls. Like we talked about, we'll want to identify what cybersecurity options are built into the SaaS solutions that you're choosing. So you can evaluate as you're looking at both the business uses and the objectives of the business, how do those same cybersecurity protections protect that information? More importantly, as you're evaluating which ones have it automatically built in and which need to be supplemented. And again, that could be either through people or processes or other technologies. Also, we want to establish a framework to be able to continuously evaluate your cybersecurity posture. There are many different frameworks that exist. They can include the NIST cybersecurity framework, NIST 853, ISO, if you have specific compliance objectives as well. But all of those will help you understand the risk of the operations of your business. And more importantly, if maybe some of your SaaS solutions meet those compliance objectives. Finally, after you start to evaluate where you want to focus your efforts on, you'll want to deploy some of those security controls to protect your SaaS solution and your company, whether that's management-based, so things like creating cybersecurity policy and outlining what should or shouldn't be done using your SaaS solution, or technically based, where we look at deploying security technologies or other specific technologies to protect your data or collect log information or even alert you about certain issues going on.
Now, all of this is great in the planning process, but it comes down to a critical component that you have to educate your team, both from the business, the IT, and the workforce side. This is training them about the changes in processes, what new applications are coming online, and which ones are getting phased out. If you don't communicate this properly, you're going to have a switching problem where some of your workforce is still using an old version of something or an outdated app. And then some of your workforce is using the newly deployed SaaS solution. And you have to clearly communicate the accepted technologies and their uses. What do we mean by this? Is if you file share using Dropbox, make sure it's the only way you file share and you don't try and use Google Drive. If you use Google Drive, make sure that you use the Drive side and not Dropbox. Same with messaging. If you have Google Cloud, but you also have Slack, make sure that you're communicating on Slack and not on Hangouts. So it unifies where everything is going. If you don't, it leads to complete chaos. Moving into that third bucket, and something that is near and dear to my heart, it's making sure that all of this budget is a secure return on your investment.
What does this mean? Well, it means you have to take in a large amount of information across your organization. So as you're looking at all the different parts that feed into your business and ultimately how you want to measure whether those are being successful, you might be looking at the heartbeat of your business. You might be thinking about staffing solutions, whether that's within your IT and cybersecurity teams or elsewhere in the business. You might be looking at customer feedback and what people are saying about your company. Looking again at IT and how it's supporting or holding you back. Looking at your workplace and your actual physical presence, whether in office or maybe at home. And even looking at how revenue is affected by the current climate. All of these pieces demand a successful measuring of whether they are giving you a return on investment, and especially today in our talk, as we're talking about your IT. Ultimately, you have to find a way to measure these successfully and find a way to point yourself in the right direction.
As Alex said, from the business leader and IT team objective, it comes down to measurement. At the risk of sounding like a CFO and saying this, you have to be able to measure the productivity, both of the workforce and its effect on the revenue and net profit that you are deploying into these SaaS solutions. If it's not a measurable benefit, then we should question if it is a good investment for our company. That's also considered when you have to show what IT is going to do in order to operationally deliver this.
On the cybersecurity side, of course, if you had unlimited money, you could continue to throw money at the problem and try to say that by spending more money, you are making yourself more secure. But that is just not true. The more important part here is you have to be able to continuously have insight into the security posture of your solutions, and you have to be able to measure it efficiently and effectively. That's going to be a huge piece of the puzzle because, again, throwing money and just implementing lots of cybersecurity solutions or technologies doesn't always reduce your risk, and it might not help you return or measure your return on investment.
So how do we measure it? We have 3 KPIs or key performance indicators that we think will help get you started. And those are to identify the reducing cybersecurity risk, increase the quality of cybersecurity event detection, and finally, increase cybersecurity awareness.
So what does that look like for budgetary items? Well, for the first one, in order to reduce cybersecurity risk, we recommend regular cybersecurity assessments. This will help you understand where your risk stands and where you want to be or where you have gaps and deficiencies. These assessments can occur internally, but they could also occur via third parties or external opinions as well. Sometimes you can even leverage compliance audits that exist to see how you are doing and maybe where you're falling short. The second is around increasing the quality of cybersecurity event detection. And this is about identifying tools that feed your IT and cybersecurity teams the relevant information. So depending on the SaaS solutions that you've chose to help your business, some of them may have included items that can help you. So maybe event detection or alerting, but other times it might need to be supplemented by additional technologies to be able to get that information to the right people at the right time. And about increasing cybersecurity awareness, it can be hard to measure the resiliency of your company, but completing things like phishing simulations can help you quantify that measurement and understand where your business is and maybe where additional training might be necessary to reduce the risk for your company.
That all sounds great, and we hope that you can take the next steps to move forward and translate these three buckets into actionable items. So for these steps, we recommend that you start with examining your current cybersecurity budgeting. Well, what is a cybersecurity budget? Well, it's a subset of your IT budget. And we recommend industry standard is somewhere around 7 to 10% of the IT budget is allocated towards cybersecurity. Well, what's in an IT budget? As simple as we can make it, it includes everything that supports your company from a technology standpoint, whether it's buying computers, Microsoft 365 licenses, paying your internet and utility bills, or paying out your MSPs so that you can go forward and make sure that that is set. Once it's done, you can allocate. Now, if this is the first time you've done this, you might be above 10%. You might be 12 or 15% of that budget because you haven't deployed into cybersecurity yet. If you've been doing this for 6 and 7 years, you might be down to 5% of your IT budget because you're just maintaining at this point. But remember, you do have a couple advantages. The first is combining budgets from the breaking down of those castle walls into the combination and sharing that was set up from the who should be at the planning table. And the second is that as you deploy into SaaS solutions, you have efficiencies in saving from the offloading of maintenance costs that is now based in your subscription model. Once you've done this, you have to look at what you've created. You have to analyze where there's overlap and duplicated efforts, wasted efforts, and more importantly, you have to identify where those gaps in services exist. So this includes examining everything, all of your resources, people, processes, tools, budgets, software, you name it, you have to see where those overlaps and gaps exist. Once the gaps are identified, you have to break them down and prioritize how you're going to remediate them so that you can effectively deploy what budget you have available for 2021 and ultimately beyond.
One of the big pieces here ultimately is going to be finding a trusted cybersecurity advisor. If you're unsure about what options to take, you need to find someone who can help you guide your organization through a SaaS security evaluation. So as you're looking at SaaS products, don't think that you can bolt cybersecurity on at the end. If you're not sure what evaluating cybersecurity solutions look like and how they exist within certain SaaS solutions, ask somebody. Find someone that you trust to help you walk through that process. Also, look at developing those frameworks that we talked about to help you align your requirements and evaluate your risk. If you're unsure how to develop those frameworks or how to take them and implement them, find somebody that can help. Finally, make sure to identify and implement best-in-class tools so that you can protect your SaaS solution and measure your secure return on investment. Don't just leave it to chance and try to take every solution and drop it in. Make sure that it's a holistic solution and those tools actually help reduce risk rather than just run up your expenses. Hive Systems is here to help. We offer smarter cybersecurity solutions with our trusted experts, and we have direct experience across both the public and private sectors. Our deep industry knowledge focuses on making cybersecurity approachable, and we focus on your return on investment. So if you're seeking a trusted cybersecurity advisor, we're here to help. In the meantime, we have our approachable cyber threats that you can subscribe to. And they'll help you stay on top of the latest threats and news coming out of the cybersecurity world. And you can find those on our website at www.hivesystems.io/subscribe. And in the meantime, at the end here of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we're offering the best phishing awareness posters around. We offer them in 3 packs of 4. The first is our 90s nostalgia with our Smokey the Bear / Fishy there. Our second is our business booster pack that focuses on a more corporate feel. And the third is called Allied Advertising, that's based on some World War II posters. And you can find all those online and download all of them at www.hivesystems.io/guides. So ultimately, let's talk. What questions do you have about this process, and how do they relate directly to your business? You can use the Bright Talk features there to ask in a question, and we're happy to answer them and talk about them more.
Alex, we do have 3 questions that popped in throughout the webinar. I will paraphrase them. So if you feel that I haven't paraphrased it correctly, please shoot that chat in again so that I can rephrase it. But the first question is, what is that first step post-budget allocation? You got everything pulled together, now what?
So if you sat down and we think back to what we talked about in that presentation, it was ultimately about looking at that assessment, getting an idea of where you stand on your cybersecurity. This can be an important step because oftentimes we take for granted some of the cybersecurity protections that occurred while our IT was on-prem or located within our environment. As we move to the cloud, we have to think about some of those same protections and what they look like. For example, you might not think that the locks on your office door are actually protecting your IT, but that physical security is part of your cybersecurity protections. If you move it to the cloud, who's responsible for the locked doors now? Most likely it's the cloud provider, but you want to make sure and understand that that's actually the case. This is where that cybersecurity assessment can help you understand where you are and where you're going. And more importantly, as we talked about, whether it's going to be your cloud provider's responsibility or your responsibility for some of these protections.
Our second question kind of ties into that. And it's, how quickly should a budget be spent or deployed throughout a year?
It really depends. When we look at our overall spending for the year, should you front load it and get rid of it as quickly as possible and sign up for things and start moving forward? Should you only spend a little bit and save some as a rainy day fund? It really depends. Oftentimes, strategically spending it throughout the year is the best approach so that you can take time to understand whether your KPIs are being met, or more importantly, if you need to reevaluate the current technologies or processes around them. So for example, if maybe you were looking at your overall risk and you implemented some management controls, so we talked about earlier, maybe you wrote a policy saying you shouldn't go to these websites, but it's not working and you're not seeing that reduction in risk, then maybe later on you decide that you need to deploy technology to prevent access to some of those websites. And so that you can now see that return on your investment and that KPI you were looking for. So being able to strategically understand what you've done and measure it appropriately is going to be a huge part of this.
And we have one final one. I'm not sure if it's a question, a plea for help, or concern, but essentially, is cybersecurity investment ever done? Can you win this game?
Cybersecurity is ultimately about risk management. It is not about just deploying something and calling it a day and hanging it up. Silver bullet solutions are often marketed in this industry, but they don't exist. And so it's an ongoing game. A big part of it is being able to continuously evaluate your risk and adjust accordingly. If your business needs change, if your company expands or contracts, your cybersecurity and your IT should move with that. And so being able to understand and evaluate it, like we talked about with some of those frameworks, is a huge part of ultimately making this a tenable and profitable way of protecting your business and ultimately reducing the risk to the company.
Fantastic. I think I've captured the questions that have come in, but I'll give just a few seconds to make sure that I don't miss any. And as that's happening, Alex, if you have any final words as we close out.
No, I think that's it. One of the big things is find someone that can help you. If you don't know what you're doing, just ask. One of the big things that we always talk about within our industry, the cybersecurity industry, is that while IT focuses on making things work and meeting business objectives and processes, the world of cybersecurity focuses on making those same things work securely. So just because something works for you and does the thing that you want it to do, whether producing a widget or analyzing data or taking customer inputs or fulfilling online orders, it might not be working securely, and that could end up being a huge problem for your business. So ask somebody who knows and get an outside opinion. And obviously, we're here to help and assist, but there are many companies like us who are willing to step in and help you stay secure. The final thing, too, of course, is especially as you're working from home with your families, make sure to apply those same principles at home. Think about protecting your own data, your pictures from your wedding or your kids or whatever else. All those same protections at home can help you stay secure and potentially for your company, everyone who's working at home, protect your company from all of those different endpoints that now exist in everyone's house. So take the time to secure yourself, secure your family, and ultimately secure your company.
Fantastic.
That's great.
Thanks,
with that, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. We'll talk to you soon. Again, I'm Alex Nette, President and CEO of Hive Systems.
And I'm Michael Cardman, EVP and CFO of Hive Systems. We look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you. Take care.